Hey guys, thanks for tuning in again, and shout out to all the people who have liked, shared, and subscribed. Keep doing that. We love getting the word out. On this week's episode, we have a good friend and mentor of mine, Mr. Virgil Dortch. Virgil played semi-pro basketball in Europe and also has been self-employed for over 40 years. Maybe even more importantly, he's been married 46 years. He talks to us about success, whether it's business, sports, or marriage, and it was an honor to have him on our show. Now let's get to it. All right, guys, today we got my friend, Mr. Virgil Dortch on here. I'm pumped to have him. He's been a good friend of mine for a little over 3 years now. I met him in a networking group, and he's just one of those guys that's always brought value into my life, always tried to mentor me, and I'm not gonna tell you how old he is, but he's got a little age on me where he's got a lot of life lessons that I wasn't able to learn. So Virgil, thanks for being here, man.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah,
quite welcome, Alex.
So pumped for them to hear your story and to hear, where you came from. I know a little background, but where you came from, and then also just like how you've been self-employed all these years, been able to make that work while raising a family. I can't wait for them to hear it. So I guess just give us a start,
Well, I'm originally born and raised in the city of Chicago. I guess you could say tremendous blessing is the mere fact that I had a minister as a dad. So obviously my father raised us with my mother, and she was the first lady in the church. He was the pastor of the church. So whether we wanted to be there or not didn't matter. We were going to be there, and we were in church. And generally, we were there the entire day because the way our church was laid out, we had service. And after service, we go downstairs underneath the church in the basement. We had lunch because everything was cooked and prepared right there. And then from there, you went back up to the next service later in the evening. So we generally spent a lot of time in church. And my dad always wanted us all to be actively involved in the church. So I had an older sister who actually played the piano, and ultimately I was the lead singer in the choir, which which was something I did. And singing ran in the family. My father was a very good singer. My youngest sister was an outstanding singer who did it professionally. So those are some of the blessings. The other blessings is that growing up in the city of Chicago, starting life out in the Robert Taylor homes, although there was the projects, we were living in the projects. So when you look at good times, and JJ talks about dynamite and all of that, it really wasn't as good times. But I never had fear or anything because it was where we were. And it's like any community, that was the community you were in. You knew who was there. As we continue to develop and grow, my father always reminded us that even though we were living in the projects didn't live in us. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that was a mindset early on that, I started to gather. You don't have to keep yourself in a place that you're in, and the only way to get out of a place that you're in is that you can't be mentally tied to the place. Mm-hmm. You can be emotionally tied at that moment, but mentally you've always got to see yourself somewhere else. And that's what happened to us. Ultimately, we moved to 63rd Street into the Inglewood area, and from there out to 95th Street in the city of Chicago, which is where I finished up growing up, in my life. I swear I actually got involved in sports, which has been, an extremely important facet of my life and helping to develop me to become the person that I became in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whenever so I love how you started off with you literally said here was the blessings I had when I was a kid. And so you're in the projects and your dad is a pastor. I just got to ask, is there a ton of people to minister to? Was your entire childhood a life of ministry to those people until you moved, or how did it work?
No, I was just a kid, and okay. As a young kid, the oldest kid in the family, I don't know if any of the people from the projects attended the church that we were at, Little Zion Baptist Church, which was over off of 35th Street. I don't know if any did, but, we had a very, very strong group of people within the church that became family and friends. I remember my dad was always marrying someone, or he was someplace to bury someone. And I remember growing up as a kid that, insurance evidently must not have existed as much, because I know we were always passing the plate for someone that had passed to make sure that sister so-and-so or brother so-and-so would have the necessary funds to enable them to bury someone. And evidently cremation was not a popular thing then. I think burial was the popular only thing that most people did. I don't even know if it was sinful to do cremation at that time, but there was a picture of burial always, because it seemed like it was always going to funerals. I know as a kid in the church, my dad had a circle of friends, which were big-time ministers in the city of Chicago. Reverend Clay Evans, who a lot of my family on my mother's side attended his church, and Reverend Knox, who, Nix rather, Reverend Nix, and Carl Nix, and Clay's son Ralph. We all took piano lessons together. I don't really know whether Carl ever learned to play. I didn't really learn to play the piano. Ralph, I think, did learn the piano. But Carl and I learned how to play basketball and shoot jump shots, so it worked out well. And Carl was he was the starting point guard on the Indiana State team that was undefeated until they ran into Magic Johnson at Michigan State.
Ooh.
Yeah, Carl was the point guard on that team. And, so again, circles leading you into other circles, which was kind of cool as a young man growing up. As a singer, I think I was a pretty good singer. I had a very creative mind, though, so I was always into thinking things through. And the only time I got in trouble in church is if somebody on the White Sox hit a home run. Because we'd have service going, and if I was singing and they hit a home run, the big monster went off at Comiskey Park, and
You could hear it.
yeah, oh, we hit one! oh, back to love the Lord.
You do sing good.
So something you said about I just love that comment about living in the projects with the projects not living in you. Was that, I guess, different perspective than most kids that you grew up with? Was there a lot of kids that lived in the projects mentally and physically?
I really don't know, because when that was imparted upon me, I think that came about from my dad giving us a better understanding of where you are versus where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you see, my dad had 28 siblings. He had 28 sisters and brothers. So it was during a time throughout history for his parents, as they were having children, where, people, black people like myself, they didn't have as many family members that were brought over on the boats, okay, to put it mildly, because our lineage began through Africa. Well, obviously bloodlines have changed throughout for everyone. Bill Murray had it right when he said we're all mutts, we just don't like to believe it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, bloodlines are mixed heavily throughout America. And I don't know if that was part of the forefathers' plan, but it is part of the reality. And in the reality, if you didn't have a very, very large family, and you were a group of people that could not afford to pay people to do the work, and you were trying to maintain and hold on to your properties, it made it tough. Now, when it came time to bring in the harvest. But if you had a large family, that large family could bring in the harvest, but that large family also gave you protection as well. And so, him having that many siblings, he had seen and grown through a lot of change coming out of the South, moving into the North. He was a singer, went from singing into the ministry. He had gone through a lot of changes. And I always tell people, my father was one of the smartest people I ever knew and met in my life. And he only had a 6th grade education.
Wow.
That's awesome.
But he had wisdom. See, and there are a lot of book people. I've interviewed a lot of people who wanted to come to work with me over the years that I've been self-employed, who had PhDs, but didn't, I wouldn't dare want them to walk down the wrong street.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't know how to handle it or help themselves in life to protect themselves.
No common sense.
Right. You had great book sense, but no common sense. And see, and he instilled a lot of common sense into us. Now, he was not the disciplinarian in the house, though. My mother was a disciplinarian. We called her the warden. Okay. And no man in my lifetime has ever hit me as hard as my mother hit me. My mother was truly the warden. And when she would send out my siblings to get me to bring me in from the park to go to the store, which I'd already been to like 4 or 5 times that day, and we're trying to hold on to the basketball court. Even my friends would see my mother coming across the park, and they would say, "Oh man, here comes Ma Dortch," and all my friends would run. It wasn't just I was going to get whipped.
Yeah, they were too.
They were going to get whipped too, because she knows that they were the ones that were helping to encourage me not to come home. So she spread it around to everybody's kid.
That's hilarious.
So I always get a chuckle out of when they say, it takes a village to raise a kid. See, I grew up in the era of the village, where it was not uncommon for a neighbor to tear your behind up if you were out of line. I remember a cousin of mine, my mother's sister, Dean, rest her soul in heaven. Um, I remember she came by and Tony was staying at the house, and my mother had to whip Tony. And she told Dean she had to whip him because he had gotten out of line. She said, You whipped Tony? Where's he at? And she called him in there, and she took him in the room and whipped him also. Your aunt had to whip you. I send you over your aunt's house, and you had to get a whipping. No, you got a double whipping.
Man.
Yeah, times were a lot different.
Yeah, you can't do that in today's world.
Yeah.
But criminals weren't common either. See, today you have common criminals. What do I mean by that? You weren't shoplifting. You weren't doing all these things you see that go on today that children have access to doing, because the child can turn right around and say, I'm gonna turn you into defect.
Yeah.
Because you spanked me and you put a whip on my arm. I want you to know, my mother would have lived in jail, but you weren't going to be in jail.
Yeah. So you would, I would have loved to go to a family reunion when you were about 12.
You go to a family reunion now. We're going to have a holiday, part of my family be together. You'll hear all the war stories.
But one thing you had touched on earlier, and I think that it's really part of your whole story, is the sports. When did you get into sports? Because you were singing in the church, and then you end up in sports. And I don't know.
When we moved out to 95th Street, where we live, we were 3 doors down from the park. Okay, so having a park 3 doors down enabled you to go to the park comfortably and securely without my parents having to have worry or concern. When I lived on 63rd Street, there was no park really near us. Okay, and when we lived at the projects, I mean, your parking lot is your park. Okay, and I was much, much, much younger then. So as I started to get a little older, we got into the 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, we started playing basketball right there at the park, if the big fellas would let us on. And when they wouldn't, then what we did, we went back up to our playground, Wacker, where we had basketball courts, and we started playing basketball there. We drew our own, what we called at that time, some people say stick ball, but we drew our own little strike zone on the wall, on the building wall. We set up our own pitching area where you pitch from, and we would take rubber balls and we would pitch and you'd be hitting it. I mean, we played full-blown baseball games that way.
On the concrete right there?
Right on the concrete. And, you're throwing a rubber ball 100 miles an hour, and you're catching up with it with the bat. And you putting that puppy over the fence. When it went over the fence, you had a home run. I mean, we literally played baseball on concrete is where it all started.
That's so cool.
That's where it began. And as we got older, then we became the older guys. So then we started getting involved in baseball in Little League. And so I joined the Cubs team, which was Ernie Banks's baseball league. He was the sponsor of that league. And that's how I got in baseball. And then they changed my name. And I've always had name changes. I know that may sound crazy, but I've always had name changes. So playing baseball, they said I could hit the ball so far that they said I must have been using a country hick, meaning a tree. So they started calling me Hick because I could hit the ball so far. And, I'd had a cannon for an arm, and I prided myself on that because my idol in baseball when it came to throwing the ball was Roberto Clemente, okay, who played for the Pittsburgh Pirates, okay? My partner Terry, who passed some years ago, he was a big fan of all the Alou brothers, so he would go up there. He didn't have the power I had, so he made a big deal out of the Alou brothers. I get on base. Yeah, I bring you home. Otherwise you get left on base. So that's what got me into the baseball. And then we started playing football, and I had great speed, but I had a good arm. So like my grandson, they made me a quarterback because I had a great arm. Okay, I could throw the ball a long way. Now, not always accurate.
Yeah.
So I could get it out there. You better be able to run, catch up with it, because I could sling it. But my attribute was the fact that I could also take it and run with it. So way, way before the Michael Vicks of the world, I was running touchdowns. I mean, I was like third running back in the backfield.
Yeah.
And I would take off. I'd give you a juke here and there, what they call breaking ankles. And if you missed, too bad. It was good night. And I would score. Got out of football because as a freshman in high school, I didn't want to ride the bus home by myself. All my friends were going to try out for our high school team, which was Harlan High School. And I hadn't even picked up a basketball Okay, my brother Mike did, Terry did, but I hadn't picked up a basketball. And but I also was smart enough to know I didn't want to ride the bus through several gang territories on my way home by myself. So I decided to go with them and try out. And he'd bring 5 on and take 5 off. I went on as part of a 5, and really just trying to pay attention to what they were doing. And I saw the ball go up, and I saw guys jump up there to go get it. So when I went out there as part of the 5, one of the guys, I thought he was passing, but actually was shooting it, to show you how much I knew. He shot it, it hit off the backboard, and hit the rim, and it bounced up. I leaped over everybody. I mean, I was way upstairs, and I just grabbed it with one hand, yanked it, brought it down, and took off running. And Ken Shanklin was the coach of the freshman sophomore team, and he just blew his whistle. Becked me to come over, said, "Well, son, you're a pretty athletic young man, but you have no idea what you're doing out here." He said, "You sit over here with me," and he took the ball. And then I probably was the first guy cut, because I probably was cut right then and there. He really didn't have to go through the formality that, step forward, you can get back. I mean, he had already cut me, And I took that the hard way. I took it to heart.
You took it personal.
I really did take it personally, because here I was, one of these young men who had this belief in him, an attitude that there wasn't nothing that I didn't do good. I didn't have to be great, but there was nothing I didn't do good. And here this guy had he just kicked me to the curb, in essence. So I started actually going to the basketball games. And I mean, after school, 3:30, there I was watching the freshman, sophomore team play. Because back when I was growing up, freshmen and sophomores automatically had to play on freshman, sophomore teams, even in college. Okay? Dunking was not allowed. I mean, there was no such thing as dunking, okay, back then. That went out with Lou Sender from Power Memorial, because no one in New York City could stop Lou Sender, which, he obviously changed his name later to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. No one could stop it. And they couldn't stop it even when he went to UCLA as a freshman. I mean, UCLA had just won the national championship, and the freshman team, which he was on, beat them. So the NCAA took dunking out. Dunking was out of high school.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we had no 3-point shots either. You could shoot it out there and you could hit it out there, but you're getting 2 points. Right. And so I started going to the games, and television was not prevalent. Now, you young fellas may not realize that, but once upon a time we had 4 channels, and you had rabbit ears. And if you had a younger sibling, you were fortunate, because when you had a younger sibling, you take some aluminum foil and put it on the rabbit ears. Then you have that younger sibling hold it and have them move till it got just right where the reception would come in, where you could see the picture. All right, don't move. I'm getting tired. Well, the show gonna go off in a few minutes, because if they moved, you'd lose the reception. So, so you didn't see any basketball games hardly on television during that time. There weren't that many NBA teams. I know you're looking at 30 today, but back then it was 12.
This was before Michael Jordan changed the game.
No, this was way before Michael Jordan came into the game. Michael Jordan was still,
It's like Bill Russell.
he was still younger than me. I'm talking about when I'm watching Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain and Oscar Robinson, and
Dr. J.
Dr. J hadn't arrived. No, he had not arrived. He became the next group level. And that was, as I was finishing high school, is when Julius and David Thompson, a whole lot of the other guys came out and started into the new league, which was the ABA, and I'll come to that. But, I started watching the games, as I said, at high school, and then I saw this one guy. His name was Gilbert Jordan, and they called him Gil Hooley. And I was watching what he did. I mean, had a really, really quick first step. He would take off from the right side of the floor, go to the basket with his left hand and lay it up with his left hand. If back then you'd had true 7-footers too. And if a guy was coming, he'd just bring it down, and I mean, just rock and roll the thing to sleep, and then reverse it on the other side. And so I would go out to the court, and I was just emulating everything I saw him do. And then I had my youngest brother, who now lives here in Powder Springs, Jerome, and Tony Rowe. They were younger. I would pay them to try to steal the basketball from me so I could actually learn how to dribble the basketball. I went back as a sophomore to try out for that same team. Now, I'm sure when Coach Shankton saw me coming, he was shaking his head like, oh, Lord, this guy again.
I hope you learned how to dribble.
And I put on a show. In the first few moments of tryouts, and he called me over and just set me to the right side. So evidently, the first year he sent me to the left side. So I was like closer toward the door. This time he had me stand over on the right side, and I didn't get to go back in. I thought, okay, man, I thought I did well. I'm thinking negatively. You know, I thought I did well. You know, I didn't impress him. And then I just said, forget about it. I impressed myself.
Mm-hmm.
I did well. I did good. Well, little did I know, I really did do good. And it was the right attitude that I impressed myself, that I didn't put my focus on worrying about impressing him. So I tried best I could to get rid of the negativity as quickly as I could. Well, I made that team. I not only made the team, I was a starter. Mm. And when we got near the end of the season, and our season was ending and playoffs were beginning for the state, I was pulled up to the varsity.
Let's go.
And I didn't realize just how far along I had come because of the commitment that I made, but the focus. I mean, I had tunnel vision focus, not peripheral, but tunnel vision. I only saw me getting better, and I only saw myself playing the way Gilbert Jordan played. Went back as a junior. Gilbert came back heavy. You know, he took a summer off or something, but he gained a lot of weight. So all while Gilbert was, in essence, rehabbing himself and running around our gym in a rubber suit to sweat off pounds, I was playing his position. Mm. And as the season started, I was playing his position, and I was playing his position like he played his position. I wasn't quite as good defensively as he was because I was not quite as strong as Gil was as a senior, but I was quick as a cat, leap out of the gym. I would take off the same way he took off, going around that right side, coming off of that, off your right foot with your left hand, going up. And I mean, I was higher than he would be, and I would be sitting it on the square, laying it up. But I used to always say, people said, man, you got more moves than X-Lax. I could reverse it any way. And I mean, I could hang in the air and reverse it. Unlike Gilbert would go around and reverse it, I would just be floating to do that reverse. And so I was averaging in the 20s, and then he being a senior, and he was the 4th ranked basketball player in the nation. When he came back for his position, I moved down one spot. And there were some other guys on the squad that were not happy because that meant they had to move down as well. But I had gotten good enough that I had passed them and surpassed them. Man. And you know, and obviously we went on into the state and we did very well. We lost to Thornridge in the state, and that was Quinn Buckner's squad. And we had beaten them during the summer 2 out of 3 times we played them. But the biggest problem the city of Chicago schools had, here you had the biggest network of schools in the entire state. You go through all the drudgery of winning the city of Chicago, which you're winning some of the top players around. Then you always have to leave the city of Chicago to go play on the suburban schools floor. And you're 10 points underdog. I mean, you come to my school, you're 10 points underdog. I mean, you know, you got my fans, you know, the referees, they know that, they see that, they get caught up in that. And the same thing happens when you go to their place. So we wound up losing the game. Gilbert got undercut in the game when we could have won the game. And my school acted up and acted ugly. They turned all their buses over and at the suburban school. So that was and then the Illinois High School Association said that the public school, the public school decided they just weren't going to play in the state. You win the championship in the city of Chicago, then you're the champs. You had to beat the Catholic school, which had their championship also, because they didn't play in the state. And so the Catholic schools, kids like Corey Maggette, who played in the league, played at Duke from Chicago. Well, his Catholic schools didn't play in the state. So when we were going to boycott it, the state opened it up and allowed everybody to play for the state. And if you won the city of Chicago, you went to Champaign, Illinois, right to the Sweet 16. And as a result of that, the city of Chicago won the next 10 championships in a row. And then I mentioned Corey Maggette and them because they won it the 11th year Mount Carmel did. And then you had the Mark Aguirres and Larry Johnsons come along and they win the state. Then you had Marcus Liberty come along and they win the state. Then Simeon, because it was level.
Yeah.
The playing field was level. So when the playing field was level, then it was a matter of being able to just throw the ball out and let guys play and let guys compete. Now, I will tell you a funny little story, though. Television wasn't big. I asked Coach Humbles, and my coach is in the Hall of Fame in the city of Chicago. I asked him if I could go in and stick Quinn because Dennis had gotten foul trouble from sticking Quinn Buckner. So Quinn sees me about to stick him. He don't know me from Adam, but he sees me. So the first thing he does is they run a play to cut him through the lane and post him up on the left side of the floor. So Quinn, they said, Buckner cuts through. The radio announcer goes, Buckner cuts through. He posts up on the left side. Ball goes down to Buckner. Buckner turns and a vicious hack. I tried to take both his arms off, okay? And then I stood over him and I said, I got 4 more. I wouldn't jump if I was you, and walked away.
How old are you right then?
I'm in my junior year, so what is that, about 17?
16?
Yeah,
Nice.
somewhere in that. I wouldn't jump if I was you. He had 26 points at that point. He wound up finishing with 29. Okay, and that's what enabled us to get back in the game. And, growing up in the city of Chicago, the game it's a very, very physical, aggressive game. And our summer leagues were that way as well. And it was a lot of trash talking.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I mean, you didn't get no technical fouls, and you weren't fighting. See, the new generation, man, you can't foul them, and then when you do foul them, they want to fight. Back then, everybody knew you were going to get fouled. Everybody. I mean, my left and right elbow had their own names. Yeah, assault and battery. And I was going to use them if you rolled me. And people today say, well, why do you think the game changed? Well, the game always will change if the money changes. And the money changed. Back then, you played the game not because you were going to be rich. You played the game because you absolutely loved it. You loved the grind. You loved the elbows, the fight. And today, you have television money involved. You have gym shoe money involved. Like wrestling, like watching Brad Pitt in a movie. It's entertainment now. And, and people have to pay $200, $300, $400 for a court seat. So they don't want to come to the game and LeBron's not on the floor. They don't want to come to the game and Steph Curry's not on the floor or Trae Young. They come to see these guys, and I understand that. And for these guys, I'm not envious. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful to see these guys make the kind of money that they make. I just think that it's too much money being given out when you have to give so much less in other areas. And people always say, what do you mean? Well, I'd rather see more money paid to teachers. I'd rather see more money paid to firemen. I'd rather see more money paid to police officers. I'd rather see more money paid to men who go to war. They go to war and they come back home and they can't even keep their own home. Sometimes they lose their home due to the bank taking it because it's foreclosed on. I mean, what kind of crap is that? Here you go defend your country, and more important than that, give me the opportunity to sleep good at night in bed. I don't hear bombs, and I certainly don't see anybody coming through the window. You're rushing into places where I'm rushing out, and you're a police officer. I mean, yeah, he's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pointing backwards. He's running that direction. I'm going this way. The firemen, the same thing. He's running in. The teachers who create rocket scientists. I mean, we pay them pennies on the dollar, but yet we will pay a guy to jump and do something that I did all my life growing up, for the most part, free.
Real quick, guys, this is Rob with the Wheeling Agency. I just wanted to reach out to y'all. We've been in business a little over 3 years here in Paulding County. We take pride in serving our community, so next time you're in the need for some insurance, give us a call and reach out. Now get back to the show.
I was saying, Alex, what did sports teach me? One of the most important lessons that sports teaches, most people take for granted, I think, and why sports was so instrumental in my life and was so instrumental in my children's life, is that it teaches you wins and losses. You don't always win, you don't always lose. Mm-hmm. And when you do lose, you work harder so that you can win. Because life is that way. Life is about peaks and valleys. Mm-hmm. And in life, you really want to work toward having more peaks than you do valleys. Mm. And I always tell people, one of the greatest fears people have is change. Well, I tell people all the time, change is inevitable, success is optional.
That's
Okay.
good.
And you can choose to win, you know, and you don't always win, but you can choose to win. And the way you win is that it's by the inch. Every day you get up to do something and add something to what you do.
1% better.
Absolutely. And if you do that, you survive in life. When you don't do those things, you give up on life. And see, when people think they're losing in life, there are a lot of people that just give up.
Yeah.
Because they think they're losing rather than understanding that, okay, no, you sustained a loss. But God opens windows. And everything that you lost, you can have back and more. I'm living proof of that. I know that for a fact. I lost almost everything in my life at one point except my family. But everything I lost, he gave back to me and more. Way more.
That's good.
Because I didn't allow the loss to settle in my head to make me think I was a loser.
Absolutely.
And that's what sports does, okay? And I've used that throughout my life to wake up every day understanding that I can have a bad moment, but I don't truly have a bad day.
Yeah.
And that's how I operate.
I think there's something to be said about that perspective of when you got cut as a freshman, a lot of people would just go and do something else, but you went to work. It's like that loss drove you to go win, but some people just quit. You know what I mean? So that sports reference is powerful in that you pushed through it, and then you ultimately did win. It's inevitable that you're going to lose at times, but
Absolutely.
But you just got to keep pushing. You got to keep pushing, and eventually you will win.
Correct. And that's how I've tried to live my life. That's what I've tried to instill in my children. That's what I try to do when it comes to the people that work with me and work around me. Because I mean, I've worked for the last 45 years as a self-employed person.
Yeah.
Okay, as a 1099. And it was more so challenging when I first started in sales than it was when I changed industries and went into the industry that I'm in currently for the last 30 some years. Okay. And people say, well, what's the difference? It's still 1099 and selling. Well, the difference was I woke up unemployed every day until I actually made a sale. And then when I made a sale, that meant I made some sort of income. Okay. Whereas when I transitioned, because the industry changed, I moved into an industry where my clients became clients that paid every month. And as a result, I received some form of residual income every month, which means I built my own salary in what I do. Now, I've always tried to work in an environment where I felt I'm helping people. So when I transitioned into sales, I sold reading programs for children. And the reason I sold reading programs for children was simply because I thought education was the key to success in life. And I thought that if you get your children off to an early start, heading in the right direction, help them learn to read phonetically, help them learn math, science, I really felt and believed that you could open doors for your children in the future that ordinarily might not open. So that's what got me started. And to me, that was more like my ministry at that point in time. I loved what I did. It brought me here to Atlanta. I mean, this was the, third transfer? Because I mean, we transferred and took a promotion to St. Louis, then from St. Louis to Minneapolis, and then from Minneapolis to here. Now, along the way, I mean, I got to enjoy life. I mean, thoroughly enjoyed life, not so much in St. Louis, although we had friends that we met and spent time with. Minneapolis, I really enjoyed because I got a chance to meet quite a few celebrities there. I mean, Prince, Terry Lewis, Jimmy Jam, spent a lot of time with Alexander O'Neal and Sherelle. Matter of fact, one would say I was a groupie, my wife and I, because we didn't have to pay to go anywhere that Alexander and Sherelle were singing.
Oh, cool.
And they were just coming into the industry, just starting to really develop a name for themselves. Matter of fact, Terry Lewis gave me Alexander's first cassette. Okay, not 8-track, guys, although I had an 8-track, but first cassette. All right, as things moved from 8-track to cassette. And I got it right at Terry Lewis's house when he took me downstairs and introduced me to the crew, which was, they were funny as all get out because they were all downstairs. You'd think they were down there to do music. No, they were down there talking about each other's mother. They were playing the dozens, Prince included, okay? I mean, he down there talking about Morris Day's mama, and they were all extremely close friends. They were in business together in a lot of ways, but Prince was the head.
Oh yeah.
He was the head.
Makes
I mean,
sense.
you know, and he fired Terry and Jimmy when they couldn't get back to Minnesota because they were writers and they wrote songs also for the SOS band here in Atlanta. We'd had a snowstorm in Minneapolis. Now in Minnesota, they were fine, man. They cleaned the streets up. We went down to First Avenue and caught the show. Once again, that was a groupie. It was free to me. So, but yeah, you know, but they were all close and they were all became very, very successful. But it was kind of cool. You know, I love the Twin Cities. I love the European feel that it offered and had. And it's one of the prettiest cities in the country. But when our time was up there, you know, we came here to Georgia. And when I got here, you know, we had family here. My wife's parents moved here, which meant we had a grandparent. And since moving here, all my family has moved here. I mean, all my siblings have moved here. My youngest sister, who was in the music industry, she's back in New York City. You know, this was too slow for her. She's big city, you know.
What kind of work was it that you were doing when you got to Atlanta? I guess, was it transition, or were you just getting
It was
promoted
transition. I was still doing reading programs for children when I first came here. Okay, and the company gave us 4 options. I mean, I had Dallas, Texas. It was too flat, too hot, and too many gun racks. I went, you know, we went out to LA. The cost of living was way too high for us. That was a long way away from family, with the exception of Pam's cousin and my cousin in San Diego, but it wasn't our immediate family. And I said, look, you know, we don't ever visit Angie and them, so ain't nobody gonna visit us either. So, you know, I turned that down. Then we had Louisiana, and I got there. It was too dirty for me. I mean, you know, look, great place to go party, great place to leave. You know, if you just
I agree with that. You can't get out of that place fast
enough. You know, I stop in Savannah now. You know, I get the same New Orleans flavor, the same seafood and gumbo, and it's clean.
And it's there.
I love Savannah.
So you went from high school doing the semi-pro basketball in Europe, and then you come back, you sell reading programs,
Mm-hmm.
and then you become self-employed through that.
Mm-hmm.
And then 40 years later, you've been able to build a family, you've been able to raise all these kids, you've been able to get these people, you know, it's kind of your dad's 28 person household down to you, who started all this shifting with the times. And then to get all these kids in sports and successful and in, what'd you say, in black belt or karate, all this stuff.
Well, I put him in that early on, and and he just took it up and continued with it.
But this 40-year career, you know, one thing we ask every guest on here is if you could leave information that helps the next generation pave the way. Over a 40-year career, what is a piece of advice, or maybe multiple pieces of advice, that you could leave behind to someone?
One would be, start your day every day with hope. Hope means helping other people every day. We are such a self-centered, instant gratification society now that we don't reach a hand down to help pull anybody up. We've become such a self-made generation that any and everything we do, we think it's only because of us. It's not. Yes, we've all been gifted. Yes, we all have certain gifts and tools that we're able to use. But the greatest tool you're able to use is love.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to demonstrate that all the time is by not what you did, but who did you help?
That's good.
Who did you help along the way? You know, if you leave the world and it's just you, that's got to be the loneliest last day of your life.
Yeah.
You know, the most joyful day? When my cousin passed recently, about 2 months ago, you know, and I went to the memorial. We were at the memorial with family, and you know, he was one of those people who liked to bring hope every day, help other people. Well, you know, at his memorial, there were 7,000 people.
Wow.
The speakers at his memorial were Senator Sam Nunn, Bernice King, Martin Luther King's daughter, Andy Young, who married him, a dignitary from the Bahamas, a dignitary from Cakes and Caicos, I think that's the name of it.
Turks, yeah.
Turks and Caicos. The family received condolences from the President of the United States, Joe Biden, from the Governor of Georgia, Governor Kemp, most of the historically black university presidents were there.
Wow.
You see, because he got up with hope every day, and all he did was try to help those schools find money to be opened. All he did was bring money to the city of Atlanta, be part of the group that was bringing in different things in the entertainment industry, in the movie industry, helping to get Tyler Perry here, doing things that were helping other people, not focusing on himself. And 7,000 people came just to say they appreciated what he did. See, to me, you know, when you do those things, you know, and you see people like my cousin or like a Billy Graham or like, you know, anyone that did things that were good for people, brought people together, that's the one lasting thing that you should have, because that's the one thing that you can do, and it doesn't generally cost you anything.
That legacy.
Yeah.
We talked about it this morning.
Yeah.
Leaving that legacy.
Absolutely. What does it cost you to lend a hand? What does it cost you to reach over? What does it cost you to show and demonstrate love? And I don't mean just to your friends or just to your family. I mean demonstrating love. Love is, you know,
It's universal.
it's universal. I mean, you know, Christ died upon a cross, and he didn't say he was dying upon the cross just for himself. He died upon the cross for everyone.
Amen.
So if that was the epitome of love, then why is it so difficult? It shouldn't be, and it isn't. It's just that we make people bigger than they are, and they then tend to forget the same people you saw when you were growing up. They'll be the same people you see when you come down, and everybody comes down.
Yeah.
That's right.
Everyone comes down.
That's a great point. And we talk about legacy. Like if you do live your entire life and there's only one person at your funeral, you know, what good was that entire 70, 60, 50 years that you had? What good was it if you don't impact others? I read it in a book recently that it was talking about impact and how you can, it was basically a guy saying, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. But if I could impact just one child, one child, I could change this entire world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you're saying with the hope.
Correct.
That's exactly what hope does.
It does. It does. That's what, and that's what our roles are as human beings. You know, our roles are not to be savage. Our roles are not to belittle. Our roles are not to go out of our way to hurt, maim, kill. Our roles are really to be there for one another.
Yeah.
Because when the day, you know, comes to an end, that's what it's truly about. People being there for one another. You know, that's one of the reasons why, like I said earlier, about my pet peeves about people running into danger, whereas people are running out. How much love do you have to have? It's not just the job.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not just the job. I mean, don't get me wrong. A police officer, yes, that's his job. But, you know, not everybody can do that job. Not everyone's willing to do that job. I'm not willing to do it.
No.
No.
I mean, I'm going to be trying to, you know, like I used to always tell people, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just got to outrun you. I'm going to be running faster than you to get out. And he's running as fast as I am to get in. Well, you know, we as a people, we as Americans, we've got to do a better job of really trying to figure out how we can understand each other, how we can really love each other, rather than looking for every little bitty thing we can to dislike each other.
Yeah.
You know?
And also, especially as men, and I know we put emphasis on it, it's just because we're all men, but really, as the leaders of our family and the leaders, like you had named off all those people in your family that are doing all these things, but without the hope that you maybe provided or the love that you provided as that father figure, and even to your dad, who was that minister who did get the 6th grade education, but man, he taught you a lot. You know, without that hope, without that teaching.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Your future generations are impacted because of it.
Absolutely. But I'm also reminded of the importance and the significance that our women make in our lives. You see, remember, I said my dad taught me a lot with a 6th grade education as the father, but, you know, my mother was the warden.
Yeah.
Okay. And the buck stopped with her. Okay. She was the warden. You know, women can be timid and intimidated, but mess with one of their children.
Mm.
And they go from timid, intimidated to where they become the king of the jungle, okay, because they will die for their child, okay? Well, my mother was that way as the warden, you know, and I always tell people when I say no man ever hit me as hard as my mother hit me, because no one has ever hit me as hard as my mom could hit, you know, but more important than that, my mother loved. I'll tell you a funny joke. One time, my brother Michael and I got in trouble, and so my mother was tired. So my dad came home and she said, you know, they've done such and such, so and so, and I told him when you got home, you're going to give them a whipping. So you need to take them in there and give them a whipping. So my dad brought us into the room, and he closed the door and he said, look, you all better give your mother a break. Now I'm gonna beat this bed with this belt, and you all better yell out like I'm tearing your behind up. And he was in there beating the bed. And my mother was at the door. She heard him hitting the bed and us howling like we really getting a whipping. My mother bust the door open and she took the belt from him. She said, when I get finished with them, you're next.
Oh, that's funny.
And she tore our behinds up. I don't know if my dad got a whipping or left. He had a car.
Well, dude, I want to say that too. Like when talking, because for us and you, I know for 46 years of marriage, but like our spouses, the men do have a leadership role, but like without our spouse, you know, I'm not afraid to say it. Like without my spouse, I would not have this life. I would not be me. I wouldn't have the goals. I wouldn't have the ambition. I may not have purpose. I don't know what I'd have.
We got to clip that for Brittany to hear.
Yeah, I love you. But basically, I have no idea what life would be like without that. And so what I'm saying is that balance that we have, it means more than a lot of things.
Alex, my wife was pretty much an A student, okay, and who's who in America, okay? If she got a B, she cried. I, on the other hand, if I got a D, I was thanking the Lord because that meant I was eligible. Okay, I could play, yes! All right, my wife changed me, and she was what the Lord meant for me to have, okay?
Amen.
To create that balance in life, but also to help me mold me into the person that I became. You see, I was not studious. I was not dumb. I was a very, very smart guy, but I mean, my street sense was way, way up. My book sense was way down because my desire to read all day was not there. But just the mere fact that I married this woman who gave me the motivation
And inspiration.
and the inspiration to be and stay and continue to focus on being successful.
Mm.
She gave me the freedom and the liberty to take risk. She gave me the support that let me know that even if I wasn't successful at this, that I would be successful if I kept searching. She gave me the courage to step out on faith. You know, 45 years without a guaranteed paycheck. Okay? That's not for the faint at heart. There are some people that need to punch a clock. They've got to punch a clock because they walk by fear, not by faith.
Mm.
Okay? She gave me the courage to walk by faith and not by fear.
Dude, that's good. And as a self-employed person, like we can all speak and attest to that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely you can.
That support means a lot.
Man, something you said off air in regards to the wife about focusing when you get home, hugging her, kissing her, how's her day, that really spoke to me, man.
Yeah, well, you know, again, if you got a really strong mate, you don't learn it, you get told it.
Yeah.
So my wife told me nothing bothered her more than when I would come through the door and I didn't ask her how her day was, how the children were, but I would ask her, did my agents call in with their reports?
Oh, yeah.
You know, nothing aggravated her or angered her more. And as a fortunate man to have a woman in your life that loved you enough to tell you, rather than going the other route where you get shown. You see, my wife was a woman who wanted her marriage to work, wanted her husband in her life, wanted a family that she could grow that was her family, has a spirituality that is second to none. You know, I mean, I marvel at times when, you know, I'd see her rolling out of bed at 4 a.m. so she can go have prayer time. You know, and I say, see you later. When I get up, that'll be my time to pray. I go and sit down and I'll pray. But, you know, she's going to go and she's going to have prayer time. She's going to worship. She has an incredible strength that there is truth that behind every great man, there is a greater woman.
Mm.
And for young men in our society today who think that the world revolves around them, I just want you to know you're very naive. And there's a lot of ladies out there that are not ladies anymore, largely because of men who hurt them. But if you have someone in your life that you really love, you really care, that you really want to share life with, then don't forget that all your successes start at home.
Man, that's good. That's a great point. Well, dude, I couldn't ask for much more from you, Virgil. I appreciate you coming on here
man. Thanks
and
for
talking
coming
about
on.
success,
Oh, guys.
self-employment, marriage.
I'm about to go call my wife.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to do this. Alex, I mean, you know, you and I have known each other for 3 years, and obviously I do try to talk with you as often as I can. I mean, obviously I count on you. You know, I trust you. Obviously I send my money to your company and to you, and you know, and back at me, you and Brittany, you know, and I truly appreciate that. But you know, the most important thing I always try to remind people of, that trust is hard to earn, but it's easily lost.
Yep.
You know, and when people reach out to you that because they trust you, they reach out to you because they like being around you, that is earned. It's not something that's given, it's earned. I've never asked you for trust, you've never asked me, but we both have spent a lot of time over the 3 years making sure we earn it, and we continue to do so. I thank you, because to me this is a compliment that you would bring me in and sit me down to do this, to even have a conversation with people within your circle.
Yeah.
So thank you again, and I
That's
greatly
all love,
appreciate
brother.
it.
Thank
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Good stuff.